reincarnation, as I always say, I approach with fear and trembling. It's a very difficult subject to prove whether reincarnation is so or not. And even the Master used to say, so I don't feel too badly, he says, you know, even I hate to talk about it. So you know how I feel, and you bear with me and see if we can come to some logical conclusion about reincarnation. And to have this reincarnation subject on such a hot Sunday is terrible, isn't it? But I even tried to offset that. I brought my big fan down, so at least we'd feel a little more comfortable as we discuss this subject. And I always like to start it using Master's own words. He says, this is God's most guarded secret, therefore difficult to solve. You can see if we could easily understand it, the play would stop. But it is that uncertainty, that delusion, which causes us to follow desire, and as all desires have to be fulfilled, if they are not fulfilled in this life, they have to be fulfilled sometime. And if we lay up certain causes due to the law of karma, the result must come. And to do that, we have to put on another coat, so to speak, or have another vehicle to carry out those desires. Desire is what is the basis of reincarnation. Now, what is reincarnation? Well, Master has this to say about it, and if you'll remember his words, it'll help you. Reincarnation is a pilgrimage of the soul until all of its desires are fulfilled and it returns to the place from whence it came. Just remember that much. It's a pilgrimage of your soul, of my soul, which has come out of the one eternal spirit and presence of God, and because of desire has become attached to this plane of existence in which we find ourselves, or whatever plane of existence it is. It has become attached. It has to work out those desires through the law of cause and effect and return to the bosom of spirit from whence it has come. You cannot improve on the Master's definition or statement about reincarnation. Just remember that souls are rays of the eternal spirit. Each one of us is a ray of the eternal spirit of God, which through desire has become identified with a particular vehicle, and therefore has to work out and fulfill those desires through the law of cause and effect, or the law of reincarnation, that it return to the place from whence it has come. We came from the infinite Father. All scriptures point that out. We will return to him when we have removed the limitations which keep us attached to these planes of existence through desire. Master used to always say, watch your desire. Watch your desire. And with this returning comes births and death. Births and death. Putting on a new vehicle. Putting on a new coat, so to speak. Taking on a new vehicle. Until finally we return to our Father's house. Now, we might also say, and these are the Master's words, reincarnation means the retrograde steps through which the spirit returns to itself. We came down from God. Although we seem separated from him, we seem individual, we are not. We are still a part of him. And it is none other than God that is in each one of us experiencing these things, enjoying the play, but he doesn't get attached to it. Sometimes we do. So it is the retrograde steps that we take as we return back home to spirit. We came down from him. Now we must go back through these various steps until we are once more one with him in the great ocean of spirit. And so it is the delusion that makes us seem apart from God that's the terrible thing. When the truth is we are never apart from him. Every night in sleep, where is your individuality? Where is your name and fame, if you have any, in this existence? but you are consciousness, peaceful and blissful, especially in the state of deep sleep. That's our natural state. Now, we have to come and come and come and come again until we make that state dynamic to our consciousness. Then we are free from the law of reincarnation. These are most wonderful things. And so, although we do seem that is especially ego consciousness, which is none other than the soul consciousness attached to the body, none other than spirit itself, we do seem separated from God, but the truth is we are never apart from Him, but we think we are. When we can break that thinking and realize that we are never apart from Thee, never apart from Thee, O Father, then we will be once for all free from the attachment to this world existence. That's why one of the great saints said, Thou and I are never apart, never apart. I am He, blessed Spirit, I am He. That's all you have to do, is through effort, 25% your own, 25% of the channel God has sent to you, 50% by the grace of God. Why not go to Him as soon and as fast as we can and get above this reincarnation business with all its troubles and all its drawbacks? Now I have a few references which I will give just to substantiate what I have said. First, from our own scriptures, from Proverbs, the 8th chapter, the 22nd, 23rd verse, the Lord possessed me. The Lord is Christ consciousness, in the beginning of His way, before His works of old, before creation started even. We were with Him, then He created, and His own consciousness, light and love is in all of that creation. And we are a part of that creation. And so this, from our own scripture, I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, ere ever the earth was. It is, remember, it is a ray of cosmic consciousness, Christ consciousness in creation that reincarnates. Do you understand? It isn't you as a personality. This has been caught on by the living in the drama of life. It is a ray of Christ consciousness that reincarnates. And you are that ray, so am I. We have to make it our own. So when you review reincarnation in that light, it isn't half so bad, is it? Because it presupposes that we are one with the infinite Father, being a ray of His presence. So much for Proverbs. Then also in St. John, the 8th chapter, Jesus said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. Now, Jesus was not speaking of His personality or His personal consciousness, because we know what they did with Jesus' body. He was speaking of the Christ consciousness in Him. That's what always was and will be. That's why the disciples or the multitude didn't understand Him when He said, Before Abraham was, I am. Not I was, I am. That's what reincarnates. Christ consciousness reincarnates. Therefore, and also from the Bhagavad Gita, the second discourse, 20th and 22nd line, He is not born. That refers to the consciousness in you which reincarnates, the soul, spirit itself. He is not born, nor doth He die, nor having been, ceaseth He any more to be. Unborn, perpetual, eternal, ancient, He is not slain when the body is slaughtered. Finally, as a man casting off worn-out garments, taketh new ones, so the dweller in the body, casting off worn-out bodies, entereth into others that are new. Who is the dweller in the body? Not Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so, Dr. So-and-so. It is a ray of God's presence as the Christ consciousness. That's the dweller in the body, known as soul. That is what reincarnates. And also, finally, from Revelation, 3rd chapter, the 12th line, Him that overcometh. Overcometh what? Overcometh desires and frees himself from the births and deaths of this reincarnation. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall no more go out. He shall no more reincarnate. I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. What is the temple of God? That of which Jesus spoke. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. In other words, that's the reality. That's the place we are headed for. The process is the law of cause and effect, or reincarnation. But the wonderful thing is to realize that we are one with God, only we simply haven't found it out yet. We must find it out by understanding this law of reincarnation. Now the proof. Proof of reincarnation, the pros and the cons. That is, those things that are for, point out that reincarnation is logical, and those things that are contradictory. Now, memory is not a deciding factor. People say, oh, I don't remember anything about it. I guess that's all there is to it. You live and die, and that's it. And be merry. No, that is not it. Memory is not a deciding factor at all. Because although if we can sharpen our memory, so to speak, we can remember those things which have happened in this life a short time ago or even from the beginning. But most of us cannot do that. Sometimes I can't remember yesterday's things. So memory is nothing that has no standing as to judgment of whether reincarnation is right or not. If one recognizes the justice of the divine law of cause and effect, if you realize that, if you can recognize it through the intuition of your soul, then you will know that the concept of reincarnation is inescapable. As I will point out in just a moment or two, a few instances which clearly show the law of cause and effect and the justice of that law. Otherwise, God is not just. The point is, we do not see the whole of the law, the whole of the working of the law. We just see an immediate part. Now, although many cannot remember, as I have pointed out, there are those who can remember. There are those, the great saints and sages, who can and have shown that they remember. Just as in the Bhagavad Gita. In our reference this morning, when Lord Krishna said to Arjuna, he said, many births have passed. Between us both, I remember, you remember none of yours, I remember them all. Who was Lord Krishna? He was incarnation of Christ consciousness itself. He was called the Blessed Lord, just like Lord Christ. Jesus had Christ consciousness, so had Krishna, so had many of the great saints and sages. Now they, having Christ consciousness, all memory is there. Everything is there in the omniscience of God. So if we remember that, perhaps we'll be a little careful of what we do. Everything is there, but who cares? Who cares? If this Lord, the great God himself of Christ consciousness, is dreaming this dream, and it's a dream, so it will pass away like our own dreams pass away. All we must realize is we know we are one with the dreamer. What he dreams is his business. We are one with him. If we realize that, reincarnation is easily understood, and we will not fear it, or we will not wonder if it is so. Now, as to our Master, he had many experiences, which he has told. Some of them he has written in his autobiography, the one of which Mr. Kavation read this morning, where he found where the soul was, had entered into the new vehicle. I know, I believe all those things, because I have never found the Master tell me anything that did not come true. And I know he knew what he was saying. That much I'm sure of. And he has told me many things myself. I don't care whether it's so or not, but I know because he said so, it happened. And so the testimony of these great ones is wonderful to have, to back up our personal experience and those personal fulfillments which we are longing for. In England, Master went to England with two boys. One of them was my son, and he went to Stonehenge, which is outside of London. I've forgotten just the town, Salisbury, that's it. And he was telling my son, He says, you know, one of my incarnations was here. Where the Druids were, they have that great Stonehenge, those great stones which are arranged in a certain way. And I know my son wrote back and he said, you know, Dad, he says, Swamiji said this was one of his incarnations. He was here about 4,500 years ago. That was what it meant to my son, but to us it means something more. It's something real. And then they went to the Tower of London. The Tower of London. Some of you realize that Master was William the Conqueror. So they were in the Tower of London. And the guide was showing them all around, and he came to this little corner on one of the stories up quite high, and he said, what's there? Well, the guide says, nothing. That's just boarded in there. And the Master says, no, there must be something there. There must be a toilet back there. And so they took the boards off, and there was the toilet. Why and how? Because he remembered that place. He remembered that being there and living there. Teresa Newman also remembers the vision of Christ on the cross. In other words, she went through that. I remember the Master told me she went through that and experienced it, and experiences it every so often. Why? Because she lived that, as Mary Magdalene. So we have the testimony of these great ones, which we cannot discard. And those of you who have accepted the Master as your Guru, you know he will never lead you astray. He has never led me astray. All things he has said have come true. One little thing comes to my mind. One of the Swamis in India, who was a boyhood friend of the Master, he told me, he says, you know, Master told me. Master didn't tell me. He wouldn't tell very many things. But this Swami told me, he says, you know, Master said that you and a gentleman by the name of Tulsi Bose were Master's bosom friends in the previous life. Tulsi Bose started the Master's work in India, in the little mud hut. And I happened to have the good fortune, although at that time I didn't think it was, where everything was going out, nothing coming in. I had the good fortune to start Master, or be with him in the beginning of this work in America. So much for the testimony of the great ones. One other thing comes to my mind. Just before the Master passed away, he said, out in the desert, he said, remember how wonderful it was when I first came back in Boston? He says, life's a dream, isn't it? It's all gone. Where's your father, my father? Both gone. But he says, that love which he felt's the same, isn't it? I says, you bet it is. That's the same. Then he turned and he looked, he says, we'll be apart a little, then together again. So what do I care about what's coming? I know that the true Guru is the voice of the infinite Father. And when he said those things, that particular thing, I knew it was true. How? Because the soul knows. The soul responds to truth. So we have the testimony of the great ones to help us along as we travel this path of reincarnation. Now, the most convincing argument, or pro-argument, so to speak, of reincarnation is as we view the injustices and the paradoxes of this worldly living. Why are some of the little ones snatched away before they've even started to live, and others live to a long, long age, old age? Why? Because causes were laid up, and the effect came, and that little soul had to once more return and start over. And also in different families. Why are there these discrepancies? They eat the same food, and they live in the same environment, and many of them have entirely different dispositions and tendencies within themselves, motives for action. Why? Why? Because they laid up those causes, and those effects are there, and they must be worked out, and they are worked out with good or bad results. And then in this worldly existence, we find some people in a different social standing than others, and those usually who are down would wish they were on top, and the top ones will wish they were down. But nevertheless, there are differences in these different standings in this worldly existence. Why? Some people, money just flows into them. Everything turns to gold, and other good, intelligent people can hardly make ends meet. Why? Because those causes have been laid up, and the effects are now showing up in the way of tendencies, in the fact that they are born in certain environments, And these are the result of the law of cause and effect, known to us as the law of reincarnation. Then there are the cases of outstanding people, rulers and scientists and artists, like Einstein, for instance. Where did he get that great understanding which he had and which he was able to exert on people? That didn't come from nowhere. I remember Master was in our house in Arlington, Massachusetts one time, and he had a Hindu boy with him. And that Hindu boy could multiply right while you were getting your pencil and paper ready. He could multiply 6 digits times 6 digits. He says, go ahead, make all the noise you want. Get your paper out and figure it out. 6 figures times 6 figures. It scares me to think of it. But he would, and you'd get started, he'd give you your answer as 1 million, whatever it was. Think of it. And he says, ask me any time within a year, and I'll give you that result. He says, well, what's your day of your birthday? I says, March 26, 1893. He said, you were born on Sunday, which was true as I understand it. Why? Why are these things possible? Because he brought that over with him. And one interesting thing comes to my mind, that same Hindu boy, right in our house there. Master was with us, and he asked him, and he had a guru in India, and his wife passed away. And he felt so badly, he went to the guru, and he kept at it, and he told me with his own words that the wife came and stood, was by his side, from the astral side, and the guru. And he talked to her, and then she returned. So these things do not just happen. We have prepared ourselves to receive or not to receive, to act or not to act in this great drama of life. Now, there are generalities, as I have pointed out, the difference in temperament and such things, capacities and health, in the same family, eating the same food under the same environment. Some will be healthy, some will not be healthy. Some will have a wonderful disposition, and some will be cranks and crabs. Why? Why? Reincarnation. And then, for instance, you take a man, 70 years of sin, or 70 years of evil, will not or cannot surely relegate that person to eternal hell or eternal heaven, can it? No, that bad man must return, work out those things, and the good man, perhaps he'll return for a little longer and fulfill those remaining desires which he has. So these things are interesting. Another point, Master made out, a finite life, as he says, cannot reap an infinite life. And what are we going to do with the people who are 50% good and 50% bad? Where are you going to put them in the house of heaven? What floor are you going to put them on? Well, I suggested last year, I think it was, we put them on the mezzanine floor, between the first and second floor, isn't it, as I understand it? Or perhaps we have in the celestial, we put a celestial label on them, like they do in the post office, special handling. Where are you going to put them? So this reincarnation, although it seems and surely is reasonable and plausible, it's very difficult to understand it. Like someone asked a little girl, do you believe in reincarnation? And she thought, no. She says, no, I don't know. But I like their ice cream. So, just a little breathing spell. Isn't that the ice cream carnation, I think? So there we have it. Now, as the time is slipping on, just a point that comes up here, remember that if you believe in reincarnation, you're not alone. You're not alone. Look at the 200 million Hindus who believe in reincarnation. 500 million Chinese and Japanese believe in reincarnation. The Druid priests believed in reincarnation. And many of the philosophers of East and West, Pythagoras, Plato, Schopenhauer, Emerson, they all believed in reincarnation. So we're not alone. Don't be frightened. There are many, many who go along with us. Now we come to one of the important points and interesting points, which has quite a few figures which I'd like to give you at this time, and I'll condense it just as short as possible. reincarnation in the Scriptures. You look through all the Scriptures, the Vedas, Zoroastrianism, Mohammedanism, Buddhism, and all their books, they all accept reincarnation. Realize that. They all accept reincarnation. All the old and ancient religions, and even Christianity accepts it, as I will try to point out at this time. The Bible and reincarnation. And I'll take specially, or first, the story of Elias or Elijah and Elisha. Elijah and Elisha. Sometimes Elijah was called Elias or Eliah. It refers to Elijah. Elijah came as John the Baptist. Elisha came as Jesus the Christ. Referring to kings, 1 Kings, 19th chapter, 15th to 21st verses. If you would take the trouble, you can read about these pertinent facts which I will point out. Elijah, the great prophet, Elijah the Tishbite. Elias was raising 12 oxen, and Elijah, the prophet, found him, and he cast his mantle of spirit on Elisha. Mantle of spirit means the spiritual power which Elijah had. And what happened? Elisha followed Elijah, left all things and followed him. He represented the Christ, of course, Elisha. The 12 oxen represented the 12 disciples. He with the 12. He with the 12, it speaks of in Kings, was to come again as Jesus the Christ with his 12 disciples. Now, Elisha followed Elijah after he cast his mantle of spirit upon him. He followed him, and then the divine drama went on. Now, that just in a few words is the story in the Old Testament of Elisha and Elijah. Remember, Elijah came as John the Baptist, and Elisha came as Jesus the Christ with his 12 disciples. You recognize that after Elijah cast his mantle of spirit upon him. That's the important thing to remember. Now going on, in the New Testament, there are similar activities of these two great souls. Similar points, for instance, there was a similar dress between John and Elijah. John had a camel's hair, spoken of a camel's hair coat in 2 Kings. Also in Matthew, the 3rd chapter, it speaks about him wearing a leather girdle. These are interesting points and bear looking into. Secondly, there are similar miracles performed by Jesus and Elisha. Similar miracles, almost identical. There's another point of similarity. Coming down a little further, John's coming was predicted in Malachi, the 4th chapter, the 5th verse. John's coming predicted then, fulfilled in Matthew, the 11th chapter, and in Luke, the 1st chapter, 17th verse, Matthew, the 11th chapter, 14th verse. This John is Elias, who was to come. Now going on a little further, John, the guru of Jesus, knew Jesus was coming. John, who was Elijah previously in the New Testament, as John knew Jesus was coming. And if you wish to corroborate it, you will find it in Matthew, the 3rd chapter, the 11th verse. I, John, baptize with the water of repentance. He who cometh after me with the Holy Ghost and fire. So there we can see that John knew, John the guru of Jesus, knew that Jesus was coming. And Jesus knew his guru, John, had come. Because in Matthew, the 17th chapter, the 12th and 13th verses, we read, Elias is already come. Remember, Elias meant Elijah or Eliah. Those were similar words and names, referring to Elijah in the Old Testament, John in the New Testament. And so what do we read? Elias is already come. Then the disciples understood he spoke of John the Baptist. Now finally, the guru-disciple relationship between John and Jesus, corresponding to the previous relationship between Elijah and Elisha, is very wonderful. Shows that relationship is the same as your relationship, mine relationship, with the one guru who is God himself. There's only one guru. Supreme guru is the omniscience of God, manifesting in various channels as the gurus of different people in different ages, none other than God himself. Now that relationship is most wonderful. At the baptism of Jesus we find that relationship. John did not feel he should do it. Jesus said, "Baptize me, because this is the way of all righteousness." The guru is never lost sight of. Master in all his activities always claimed and gave the power to his guru or to God himself. And so that relationship is wonderful. Then we have these other words about John said about his previous disciple Jesus, that he was not fit to unlatch his shoes. And Jesus said of his previous guru, Elijah, now as John the Baptist, no man born of woman is as great as John the Baptist. So these are wonderful things to think about, and they are taken from our own scriptures, our Bible. And so finally, how can reincarnation be understood? Surely, these are arguments, these are the pros and cons, but they do not satisfy us fully, do they? The nearest thing that will satisfy us is the voice of the Master or the Guru. He is the voice of the infinite. That's spiritual law. That's how spiritual law is carried on from one age to another, through this method. And so, when the Guru says, and you know he is the voice of God, you know it is true. This is what our Master has said about reincarnation. When you immortalize your consciousness, then you will know about reincarnation, for all memory will be yours. Reincarnation cannot be intellectually understood. One has to enter into the realm of intuition. When we, through meditation, and thereby through intuition, consciously contact the omniscient consciousness of God, all waves of lives, that is, incarnations, can be known, for all things are there.